Michael Chertoff, former Homeland Security Secretary under President Bush and founder of the Chertoff Group, a private security firm. Welcome to you indeed. I think it's fair to say that Obama and Netanyahu don't see eye to eye on this matter of what to do about Iran's nuclear at all, isn't it?
Well, I think actually there's a common viewpoint that having a nuclear bomb in the hands of Iran would be a very destabilizing and dangerous thing. I think the issue is a tactical issue. What is the best way to prevent that from happening? Is it a combination of sanctions and negotiation? Is there a point at which military force has to be ruled in? I think the president said last week when he was speaking that he didn't take military force off the table and he wasn't bluffing. But it's clear he wants to give sanctions some time to work.
I mean, he's saying he doesn't want any loose talk about war. That's what he told one of the Israeli committees yesterday. And yet we've got Netanyahu increasingly talking about the difficult decisions which have to be taken in the national interest. So that sounds like Israel really trying to push for a green light.
Well, recognize there are different audiences here. I mean, President Obama's obviously worrying about a global audience. He's worrying about a domestic audience. Netanyahu has a somewhat different domestic audience. And they're also communicating a message to the Iranians about how serious this is. And this isn't a question of just waiting the West out, but that the West is viewing this as a real red line.
So in your analysis, when does the point come that military action is unavoidable?
Well, I mean, I think they're going to want to give sanctions an opportunity to work. That's going to have to balance against the point at which you can no longer actually take effective military action because so much of what is being developed is underground or protected that you've lost the capability. Now, where that line crosses is a little bit difficult to tell. And the last thing I think that the West wants to do is to give the Iranians a clear signal. Hopefully, at some point, and it may be a result of the current elections, the Iranians maybe step back or stop what they're doing, and the problem goes.
Because the point is being made, I don't know if you'd agree, that this is not going to be a sort of one sortie operation similar to what happened in Iraq or possibly
Correct.
Syria. That this would be effectively a sustained bombing campaign.
Right. This is a major undertaking, partly because it's been talked about for so long that the Iranians would be foolish not to have taken precautions. Now, we have some very good capabilities, even against well-defended and well-protected installations, but I think you have to view this as not a one-shot.
And could Israel do this without the Americans at least giving it passive support?
Well, I'm not an expert in their capabilities. They appear to have been training for long-range mission. Whether they can actually carry it out themselves or not, only they know.
One also gets the impression that, barring very overt Iranian aggression, that certainly globally and domestically, even in the United States, this would be a very, very unpopular action to attack the Iranians in these.
I think it would depend upon how close the Iranians were to getting a bomb and how clear the case was made for taking action. Bear in mind, just a matter of months ago, the Iranians had a plot to assassinate the Saudi ambassador in Washington by blowing up a restaurant I happen to go to from time to time, by the way. And as a consequence, I think the country has taken a new look at the Iranians and is beginning to see their activities as being perhaps even more reckless than we might have imagined a year ago.
But they are not, I mean, you say there was a plot, but they are not at the stage of that Al-Qaeda got to, of actually mounting aggressive operations really outside of their theater, are they?
Well, they have actually historically been quite aggressive and, frankly, much more competent than Al-Qaeda. I mean, it's been said that Hezbollah, which is really an arm of the Iranian establishment, is the A-team, kind of the number one group of terrorists. And they've carried out operations around the globe, including in the Western Hemisphere. It is true that for the past probably about 15 years they have not attacked Americans, but that could change if we got into a hot war with the Iranians.
How do you feel as a former senior member of the Bush administration, I know not directly involved in foreign policy, when we get the news like we've got today of 27 Iraqi members of the security forces being killed by Al-Qaeda?
Well, I mean, I think that, this problem is a persistent problem that's going to be with us for years, if not decades. And there's a back and forth. We've seen Al-Qaeda raise its head now in Nigeria. In Somalia, they've been very active. They've been pushed back. North Africa. It doesn't surprise me that they're back trying to create disorder in Iraq. And I think this is going to be an ongoing, persistent threat.
You don't feel that inadvertently, perhaps, the invasion had the effect of bringing Al-Qaeda into Iraq, where it wasn't a presence before?
I think they would have, perhaps they wouldn't have been in Iraq, they would have been somewhere else. I don't think we triggered Al-Qaeda into doing something. They're opportunistic, and they're going to look, whether it's in Yemen or perhaps even in Libya, where there are opportunities for them to get a foothold, they're going to try to get that foothold.
And when you look at Iraq now, what do you think are the prospects for that country?
A lot's going to be evident when we see the next election. As long as there are elections, that's a major improvement. What would be a bad development would be if the Iranians, perhaps in response to what's going on in Syria, decide to become more aggressive in terms of asserting themselves in Iraq, and then that would cause, I think, a split between the Sunnis and the Shia. And frankly, that's something you're seeing across the Middle East now, which is why Syria in many ways is right now the real tinderbox.
And as far as Afghanistan goes, do you think President Obama is right to accelerate the end of the active military mission in Afghanistan?
I'm not a believer in deadlines, and I think it's bad to advertise to the enemy that you're planning to leave when the clock strikes 12. I think we have achieved quite a bit, I'm told by the military folks on the ground, but again, it's fraught, and if we leave too quickly, we could see all those gains get reversed. And we've had a challenging time, recently, particularly with all these bombings that have occurred in the wake of the Korans being burned. But I think the key here is to show that we are committed, and only if we make that demonstration do we have a hope of successfully navigating out of Afghanistan.
Michael Chertoff, thank you very much indeed.
Good to be on.
The Home Secretary Theresa May is in Jordan to